Welcome to Advancing Our Church, a Changing Our World podcast about Catholic stewardship, leadership, and advancement. I'm Jim Friend. Welcome back, everybody. We have another great show for you today. I'm excited to have Mr. John Matthew Knowles back with us on the podcast today. John serves as the Executive Director of the Diocesan Fiscal Management Conference and President of the Catholic Finance Association. And we're going to talk about some of the things that came out of the DFMC conference and some of the issues and opportunities that he's seen in dioceses around the country. But first, if you haven't picked up your copy of The Giving Crisis, co-authored by Brian Crimmins and Nathan Chappell, what are you waiting for? I'm so pleased to share that The Giving Crisis is literally flying off the shelves and was the #1 bestseller on Amazon recently. Brian and Nathan have been making the podcast circuit, and I'm pleased to say that we were their first stop on episode 125 of Advancing Our Church, so check it out. As you know, we're now in the Advent season, and the Advent season is a time of preparation that directs our hearts and our minds to Christ's second coming at the end of time, and of course to the anniversary of our Lord's birth on Christmas. From the earliest days of the church, people have been fascinated by Jesus' promise to come back, but the scripture readings during Advent tell us not to waste time with predictions, because Advent is not about speculation. The Advent readings that we will hear in church call us to be alert and ready and not weighted down and distracted by the cares of this world. Just like Lent, the liturgical color for Advent is purple because both are seasons that prepare us for the great feast days. Advent also includes an element of penance in the sense that we are to prepare or quiet and discipline our hearts for the full joy of Christmas. Some of your Advent devotions might include an Advent wreath, which reminds us of the meaning of this season. I hope as you work during this season of giving that you will take a moment to reflect on the generosity that God has shown each of us by offering His Son as the perfect living sacrifice, a sacrifice that permeates our lives and offers the world the hope that we will one day be united with Him in paradise. And now, let's get to work. Today we welcome Mr. John Matthew Knowles, the Executive Director of the Diocesan Fiscal Management Conference, or DFMC, and President of the Catholic Finance Association. In addition to these leadership roles, John serves on boards of directors, task forces, and advisory councils for several national Catholic organizations, while also advising several Catholic philanthropists and families confidentially and informally. He is the host of the Faith and Finance Forum podcast, also available on YouTube and streaming apps and platforms. He holds a BA from Western Michigan University, a JD from Michigan State University College of Law, and a fellowship certificate in leadership from Michigan State University. John lives in Saucon Valley, Pennsylvania with his wife Jennifer of 14 years, his daughter Rosemary, age 4, and Luke, age 1. And so, without further ado, here is John Knowles. Well, John, welcome to the podcast. So glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to be back. You've really done well with this show. I think I was last on with you maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and here you are. A great podcasting success. Well done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I believe we're at like episode 128 or 129 or something as we record this. It's been a great journey. It really has. It was great to have you at the house a couple of years ago. And since then, your role has changed. You're now president of the Catholic Finance Association, and we just saw each other at the Catholic Crypto Conference. I wanted to ask you, what did you think of the conference?
Yeah, I thought it was great. That was unlike anything I've ever done in the Catholic space before. It was just so focused on technology and the future, and I loved it. I learned so much. I made so many great connections with other Catholics and even non-Catholics that are interested in technology and how it affects people of faith. And I think that I think it was a great success. I think it's going to keep going too. I think I could see it being an annual tradition and adding great fruit to the church.
I completely agree. I was impressed with the level and notoriety of some of the speakers that Matt Pinto and the group was able to recruit for this conference. Some of them national figures like Robert Breedlove, our closing plenary session. He was just tremendous. But then all the area experts that he brought in on Web3 and NFTs and blockchain and all the rest of the things that we discussed during the conference. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I know that they're going to be working on some follow-up, I think they called them light papers, as to some of the ways in which crypto can impact the church or positively impact the mission of evangelization or even the operations of the church. So I'll be excited to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, I think you're going to see more Catholic dioceses and community foundations accepting cryptocurrency and donations and having a strategy around that, which I think is wise. And you're right, Jim. I mean, for me, one of the highlights too was I've never been to a conference where like the whole day was about blockchain, NFT, Web3, the special augmented glasses, and all that stuff.
Right.
But then in the morning, it starts out with a jam-packed mass, standing room only, very reverent mass. So no,
Oh, yeah.
it was a great success. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was that mass was incredible. I was able to make the first day for mass of the 2-day conference, and we were packed in there like sardines. I think there was 70 of us or so or more in this little tiny room. It was interesting and exciting to see because most of these folks that were there don't necessarily work for the church. They were folks who work in industry, whether it be blockchain or crypto or even finance. Many of them finance folks. And they were just interested in this topic and how the church can impact and shed its light on the light of our faith on this new technology. It was great to see.
It's interesting, Jim, and you go back to the early history of the church where the first generations of Christians were disproportionately middle class independent entrepreneurs, and Jesus' father Joseph, of course, was one of them. A carpenter
Right.
who had his own shop. But it's interesting. People think that like, oh, I mean, can people in the church really get into technology? Of course they can. I mean, that's really the story of our faith from the beginning. We've always been interested in innovation and doing things better and finding more efficient ways to serve people and to pursue the mission of the church. So no, it's a natural fit, and I really felt that. And everyone I met at the crypto conference, they were thinking to themselves, not only how can I turn this into a way to perhaps provide for my family or build a career around this, but how can I use it as a way to serve others, especially the poor?
Yeah, it reminded me back in my early days when I was a parish administrator at a parish in Philly that I helped them put together our first website, and just it's been interesting to see over my career, whether it be helping my parish put together its first website or trying this new podcast about 5 years ago, and now it's cryptocurrency. It's been exciting to see how the church can either benefit from or shed some light of faith to help direct and guide the way we use social media and other new technologies. It's been a fun ride.
And that's cool. That's a part of your personal story. It's interesting that you shared that. And another thing that I'm sure you're tracking too is going into the 2020 21 COVID moment. Especially when people weren't able to go to church in person, there was great concern that was going to have devastating impact on giving at Catholic parishes, and I think some did struggle with that, but actually a lot didn't, and a lot were able to quickly pivot to online giving and pursue that with greater intention and other methods of giving. So I mean, again, the church has remarkable resilience and agility when it comes to leveraging technology to advance its mission, and I don't think that should be surprising for a 2,000-year-old institution that's had to go through a lot.
No, I totally agree. We've had a number of folks on this show, development folks, talk about how they adapted during the COVID time period. And, where once we had maybe 10% of a parish that was giving online, now the average seems to be anywhere between 70 or 80% of parishioners are giving online on a weekly basis, which is a tremendous blessing for any parish, because as you and I know, as we live in the Northeast, a big snowstorm can just wipe out the Sunday collection for a whole diocese. And now that doesn't have to be the case. So it's tremendous. What are you hearing? Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I'd say it's a good example of, again, making, lemonade out of lemons, and also, being able to use the tools that you have at your disposal. That's a good metric you shared, Jim. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. What are you hearing from the folks around the country in the finance association? Are dioceses kind of rebounding now out of crypto? I know from just the perspective of our firm, which we do fundraising with different dioceses around the country, we're seeing people kind of come out of this and they're kind of ready to raise money and ready to kind of turn the page. What are you feeling from some of the CFOs that you talk to around the country?
Yeah, it's a diverse constituency, as you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
every what's that old saying? If you know one Catholic diocese, you know one Catholic diocese.
No,
You
that's
know what
fair.
I
Yeah, it's true.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It can
So,
be
so
said for any parish, any Catholic school, or any diocese.
oh
You're
my
right.
gosh, it's so hard to generalize,
Yeah,
but
you're
Jim,
right.
I mean, I'm very bullish. I mean, I would
Yeah.
say, and I don't want to, disrespect or not acknowledge that there are, places where the struggle is greater. I mean, obviously, but I would say if I had to, kind of generalize a little bit, I think it's good. I mean, there's just good stories coming out. The technology piece, the moving to different forms of giving. I think has been widely adopted, and I think the outliers, or perhaps the ones that didn't get on board as quickly with that, are now and
Yeah.
are enjoying the benefits you would expect from that. And then you look at institutions like Catholic schools, a lot of which did really well, during the pandemic, and now have sustained that success. It was kind of an opening for Catholic schools in a lot of ways, and there's other pressures in society which I think have the potential to benefit Catholic schools as well. So those are all good things. You look at the apostolate community. You and I were just talking about a crypto conference that didn't exist 6 months ago, and we gathered 250 thought leaders from all over the country to pray together and talk about how they could strengthen the church. Legatus is finishing up what's probably going to be a record-setting year in terms of membership. Our own Catholic Finance Association, where I'm president, again, record-setting year, robust membership, great events, doing well, with fundraising and everything else. The Diocesan Fiscal Management Conference, where I serve as executive director, had a tremendous membership year, and by all accounts, our most successful, by many accounts at least. And I'm not going to say all because they're going to find something that didn't set a record, but in most ways, it was the best conference we ever did in terms of participation and external support and the quality of the program we presented. So I think what's going on is, if you look at the history of the church, it just seems like when we face challenges on the other side, like we always come out stronger. You know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
I think we're seeing another example of that here. So anyway, just to get to your question, I would say, generally speaking, the dioceses have persevered through this, quite well, and I think you'll continue to see that.
That's tremendous and not surprising. I mean, I think there's something to be said. You can even take it back to our faith and say, I mean, when we fast during Lent, when we do without something, we come back stronger. God made us to not to live in the Garden of Eden, but to face adversity. And I think each time we do, we come back stronger as a church. And in so many ways, as we talked about, as online giving being just one example, this really propelled the church into the 21st century in a way that perhaps might have taken longer had COVID not come around. Not to say, praise God for COVID, of course, but there are ways in which I think that we are present now in the form of social media, of an online presence that might have taken a lot longer, but it really forced us through that adversity to be more present to our parishioners today.
Yeah, well said. And I mean, just in terms of where we're at with communications technology, I mean, look at some of the other things. Look at like Father Mike Schmitz's podcast, number one podcast in
Yep.
America. As our mutual friend Matt Pinto would jump in on this right now. It's not the number one faith-based podcast, number one Catholic podcast. It's the number one podcast in America. Period.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, like
incredible.
it's just. I mean, who would have thought that 10 years ago, right? I mean, you would have
Yeah.
thought it would have been. I don't know, Katy Perry or something. You know what I mean? But it's
Right.
Father.
Yeah.
It's Father Mike Schmitz. You know what I mean? And then, I look at, I was just in New York yesterday, and I can't remember, I'm not making this up. Two people, like, talking about and using the Halo app, or I think I'm not even saying that wrong, actually. I think it's Hollow, but it's Hollow app, which has become a great force for Catholics, wanting to, build prayer into their day schedule and all that. So, I mean, I look, you're not going to read about this stuff in the newspaper, okay? I mean, like,
Right.
it's not going to be on
No,
the
they're
front
not
page.
gonna. Yeah.
But if you actually like listen, if you actually like, especially with some of the folks you and I encounter, bishops of the church, lay leaders in the church, pastors of parishes, there's great stuff going on out there. There's a lot of reasons to be excited.
Absolutely. John, it's always fun to have a fellow podcaster on the show, and your faith and finance forum podcast has really taken off, and you've had some amazing guests. What has been for me? It's been an incredible journey of just getting to know so many amazing folks around the country. What has your podcasting journey been like for you over the last couple of years?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jim. That's nice. First time I've ever had the chance to talk about this. This is kind of fun. Look, this is totally just a hobby. It's something I do for fun on the side. Ostensibly, it's an opportunity to promote the Catholic Finance Association and prepare that organization for the
Sure.
next phase of its growth. So, that's the strategy behind it, if you will. But really, it just came out of my honest, like, authentic desire to like talk to people and learn from
Yeah.
people. When I worked for the Ave Maria Foundation for 10 years, first at Ave Maria School of Law and then at the at Legatus, the best part of the job was just being able to meet really interesting people all the time. And just like you as a development professional like myself, I mean, I would sit in these meetings and across the table, across coffee or meal with a great person, I would just sit there and I'd just soak it up. I couldn't get enough of it. You know what I mean?
I know, right?
So my thought was, what if I built a podcast around that where I kind of do what I was doing anyway, but I shared
Yeah.
that with others. Maybe they'll be inspired by something, maybe they'll learn something. I could totally crash and burn. I don't know, but I'm going to give this a shot. So anyway, with the support of my colleagues at Catholic Finance Association and the generous support of my dear friend Chris McMahon, whose Aquinas Wealth Advisors firm is our presenting sponsor and has made it possible. We've done, I think, like 20 episodes this year. We're
Hmm.
way behind you, Jim, but I'll catch up one day maybe.
I'm sure you
And
will. Yeah.
and they're hour-long chats where we bring in somebody who's strong in his or her faith and is doing something very interesting in business or service to others. And we
Hmm.
just we get into the background, we get into the bio, we probe into what that person is doing interesting, and I really try to provide insights and anecdotes that will be useful to the audience in
Hmm.
some way, whether it's business, family, faith, the combination of all three. And in my preparation for the shows, I really am intentional about that, trying to see where we can bring some of that out. And we've had really interesting people. I mean, my last show was with Father Robert Sirico, the founder and president emeritus of the Acton Institute, who's one of the leading faith-based intellectuals in America. It was a real privilege to sit down with him. But like being able to share like a long form probative conversation with somebody at that level, one, it's a dream come true for me. I mean, I had to pinch myself, but two, for the audience to hear that, I mean, that's just. I think that's delivering value. I'm really pleased with what we're doing with that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think whenever we can bring people of faith into the public square and around the light of our faith, whether it be topics of finance or as we talked about crypto, I think it just raises all boats, and you bring to light things and ministries and things that people are doing that people aren't necessarily aware of, and I think it's tremendous, and it's a lot of fun too. I agree.
Yeah,
I
it
I've
is.
really enjoyed it. For me, it started out as a hobby and then became part of my job here, which has been just a tremendous blessing. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. And honestly, I mean, if anybody out there is like kind of on the fence about whether or not you want to do this, look, give it a try. Like, I mean, nobody's gonna like hold it against you if
Right.
it's not your thing or it doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, I still don't know if I've I guess succeeded with it or not. You know what I mean? But I know that I'm having fun with it. I know occasionally somebody will say, "Hey, listen to the show. That was good stuff." That's enough for me. That's more than worth an hour or two
Yeah.
a month for me.
That's absolutely, I feel the same way. Somebody sends me an email or comments, "Oh, I really enjoyed that episode." That's all the that's all the thanks I need. It's just great. Keeps you going.
Amen.
John, tell me a little bit about, going back, to your role at the Catholic Finance Association as the president. I know you've been there a little bit over a year now in that role. What are some of the issues that our CFOs around the country, our dioceses, our Catholic schools, what are some of the hot topics that they're talking about at the conference? I know you just also recently had a big conference.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, and so it's a little bit difficult to start. But let me, you know, I think a good starting point might be to say that Catholic dioceses and Catholic parishes are very much businesses now. Like the chancelleries, the offices, and so and they run like a business. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that anybody who knows what it's like to be at a big firm or a big company or even a small business. It's a lot of the same things that they're dealing with: management, budgets, legal matters, risk management, mission pursuit, performance evaluation, benchmarking. So really, it's not all that different. I would say the only difference would be is that the church, faces certain challenges that, perhaps, a business in the secular world might not, including we're a countercultural organization, in the sense that the mass culture, the world around us is not always completely congruent with what the church stands for and what the church believes in. So that's a
Yeah,
unique dynamic
100%.
that
Yeah.
plays into it. So you gotta navigate that piece, which I think you can do. But I think the biggest another thing that's different about it, and this is I think our greatest strength, is that we have the presence of the church's bishops and other clergy around us who are exemplary people, people of extremely advanced education and professional preparation and leadership skill and personal morality and all the things you look for in a strong leader. Those people are there and present and completely committed day in and day out to the
Hmm.
success of the franchise. So you don't have to worry about, or maybe I shouldn't say you don't have to worry, but I think you have to worry less about the leader being distracted, with something that's unrelated to the mission of the organization. Comparing that to a diocese or a parish, etc. So I think that's a big advantage. Um, Let me, I guess, to answer a better way, might be to look at the curricula from the latest DFMC conference, where we had Dr. Andrew Abella come in from Catholic University to talk about how virtue is the basis of leadership. So I think that was well received and that was appreciated. We can't remind ourselves enough of the importance and the deep calling that working in the Catholic Church is, and Dr. Abella's speech was strong on that. Navigating the continued reverberations of the abuse crisis, is something, and it's certainly a priority, and it's there's dimensions of that, especially our continued extraordinary efforts to protect vulnerable people and identify problems before they arise, which the church has been doing it in a very intentional way, in a very focused way for decades now. Not saying it's perfect, but you can't say the effort isn't extraordinary. I mean, it's very strong, very intentional. So, and then the financial impacts that too, which impact Catholic dioceses, dealing with the legal consequences of some of that, which in broader business you refer to as a risk management consideration, a risk management strategy. So that's high on the minds. Obviously, with the starting point being protection of victims and young people, which is the top priority.
Hmm.
Uh, so I guess the last thing I'd say, which is kind of an interesting phenomena, is recruitment, retention, preparation of professional staff that serve in the Catholic Church's diocese, parishes, nonprofit organizations, other ministries. Developing leaders from within, people that have spent their entire career working for the church, but also, Jim, a very interesting influx of people from the private sector, entrepreneurship, corporate space, big firms that did that for a while, did that for years or decades, had a good run, but they want to give back to the church now. They want to do something that's more aligned with their personal belief system and give back a little bit. So you'll have somebody coming from perhaps a big four accounting firm and applying to be the CFO of a Catholic diocese, bringing in all the preparation, the training, the professional development that she enjoyed in that role, and now leveraging it on behalf of the church and in the diocese, which is a great blessing. But when we do that, we need to make sure that it's a smooth transition from one corporate culture, which is going to be very different than the diocesan culture that she'll move into.
So important. Yeah. And in my couple decades now of serving the church, I've seen so many amazing people, like you say, come from the private sector and bring those gifts and better the church because of it. And so we need individuals, and sometimes it's folks who are mid-career, midlife, thinking maybe I'm ready for a change, ready to jump into something new. Maybe it's somebody who might have had a business for 25 or 30 years and they're selling that business, and now they're looking for what the next chapter might be. They feel like they're too young to retire, but they might still have 10 years to give to the church, or even 5 years. I've seen some amazing stories where they brought their gifts, whether it be around marketing or finance or whatever, to make our church better.
Yeah, indeed, and I mean, I think we're going to see more and more of that. it's a great life. I mean, as you
Yeah.
know, I mean, like it's very rewarding. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah.
You never question the sense of purpose. You come home at the end of the day, and your wife and your kids are proud of what you do.
Yeah.
You never have a problem looking at yourself in the mirror. I mean, it's just it's a
Hmm.
good life. It's going to continue to attract people of very high quality. And look, it's not to take away anything from those that come right out of school and start working in the Catholic Church and spend their whole career there. That's equally valuable and honorable, and that's great too. I just think this is kind of a newer phenomenon, and I think it's an interesting one to continue to track.
There's always a learning curve, though. Isn't there, when it comes to helping somebody understand the dynamics of how the church works too? It's a little different from the private sector. And I just, I remember talking with our CFO once, diocese I used to work for. Hey, why don't we just tell the pastor that he needs to do this? He's just got to do, and it's a little different than just directing folks. It's consensus building, it's communication, and it's relationship, I find too. And one of the things we talk a lot about in as development professionals who might work for a diocese is getting to know the pastors and understanding the folks who are in the Catholic schools, the principals, the presidents, understanding their pain points and what's important to them is so important. It's very different from a CFO or a CEO in a top-down kind of organization. It's more of a level playing field. I find that communication is so critical in relationship building is absolutely key.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and I think that's actually, one of the most interesting features of this line of work is that, yeah, you have to get along with a lot of different kinds of people. You got to listen really intentionally,
Yeah.
and at least for me, I always go into those conversations, recalling like, this is, like the examples you said, like the school principal or the parish pastor. I mean, this person has probably committed decades of their life to this institution, to this school, to
Yeah.
this parish, or I mean, like that's where their passion comes from. That's where perhaps their protectiveness of it comes from, and that's a beautiful thing. And I mean,
Hmm.
but it's an opportunity for you to present yourself as a servant in a very Christ-like manner, and to say, hey, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I want to talk to you about. It's going to be a dialogue.
Yeah.
We're going to work together on this. And look, if you live with integrity, you're going to have great success.
Yeah, because so often I find the poor CFO or the controller, they get the bad rap, right? Because they've got to be, I don't want to say the protector of the money, but they have a fiduciary role to make the operation work, and to play that role in a balanced way with a Christ-like, with I would say a Catholic worldview is so critical in building those relationships. As you said at the beginning of the podcast, you've seen one parish, you've seen one parish, you've seen one diocese, you've seen one diocese. It's so important.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's what leadership's about, though. I mean, you
Yeah.
got to be somebody's got to. The Irish have a great saying, which we should say more in America, I think. Someone's got to have their head on the block, and
Yes.
I think that's true. I mean, look, if
It's
you're
a
going to
tough
be
role. Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to be a bishop, if you're going to be a CFO, if you're going to be an executive director, I mean, like, understand that there's some accountability that comes with that. Otherwise, you're not really ready for the role, and
Yeah.
we need to talk about that more. I mean, like that
Hmm.
with influence and authority should come responsibility and accountability.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, in the Catholic Church, I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I know many development directors I've spoken to over the years. They made a point. I did when I came to Allentown, just to try to get out and get to know as many of the guys as possible. And being out in the field, I think, is so critical. Spending, maybe 50% of your time at your desk, and it's hard to do. And then maybe 50% of your time out in the field, just kind of being present and getting to know the folks is just so critical. John,
Yeah,
what do you?
just real quick, that is the
Yeah,
hard balance, isn't it? Because
it
I don't
is.
know if you're like me, but all I want to do is meet with people. I mean, like,
Yeah,
and there's a
yeah,
few other Catholic development podcasts out here, that talk about this all the time. But I just wanted to have like 8 meetings a day. All I want to do
yeah,
is be in front of people, talking to people, talking about the mission, what we were doing. And
yeah.
the last thing I wanted to do was like file expense reports and send
Right.
notes and hold meetings, and I just anyway, it's interesting, but yeah.
No, it's so true. It's so true. What do you, one of the hot topics, obviously, in a lot of dioceses are just Catholic schools. And I'm sure that the CFOs that you interact with, many of them are facing different challenges, whether they be consolidation or enrollment challenges or marketing challenges. What are you hearing out in the field? Anything new coming down the pike on Catholic education?
Yeah, we had a great panel discussion at the DFMC conference in DC back in September, and we had Kathleen Porter McGee and Keith Parsons and Tom Carroll, our great friend from Boston, the head of Catholic schools in the Archdiocese. And so it was a very strong panel with different backgrounds and different perspectives. And at least the report of that panel was that there's a lot of good out there. There's always going to be exceptions, obviously, but generally speaking, the COVID years were opportunities for a lot of Catholic schools. The ones that perhaps aren't keeping up with that overall trend. I just wonder if those are local circumstances that aren't perhaps necessarily related to the product of Catholic education, but perhaps meta factors that are beyond that. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. Like in my home state of Michigan, there's been a lot of out-migration over the past 20 years. I'm an example of that. I spent my first 29 years in Michigan, and now I've lived in Florida and Pennsylvania since then. But there's just a lot of communities that have shrunk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's just nothing going on there. People, there's no children. And so I guess when there's a lot of examples like that, I know there's a lot of examples of that in other parts of the country. I just wonder if that's getting mixed into the data sometimes. Then they're like, it drags down. I don't know. I mean, I wish I was better when it comes to this statistical analysis. I'm decent
Hmm.
at it, but there's people that are way better than me. What I'd
Hmm.
like to do is maybe find a way to separate out kind of like the outliers don't actually have anything to do with the Catholic education product or perhaps the work of that local diocese. Somehow be able to like separate those out and just look at the ones that have a fighting chance at succeeding, and not necessarily the ones that just because of other circumstances don't really. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It really does. Well, when you were talking there, you mentioned you were from Michigan. What part of
Yeah.
Michigan?
Yeah, I grew up outside Detroit, a little
Oh, so
town
did my
called
wife. That's
yeah,
so
yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah, a
Yeah.
little town called Bloomfield Township. So
Okay. My wife was from Birmingham. That's so funny.
yeah, right down the road.
Small,
That's great.
small world. No, no, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. I think when we were tackling it when I worked in the Diocese of Allentown, which is a few years ago now, but we really looked at some of the marketing that was and some of the enrollment strategies and really trying to professionalize that, getting more advancement directors in helping our elementary schools that are under resourced. We live here in the state of Pennsylvania, as you and I are both residents of the Lehigh Valley. We were beneficiaries of the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program, which has been
Hmm.
just tremendous, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. I know it helps several other states around the country. But it can't just be what I think I learned through the process is that yes, there's certainly a fundraising issue, that there's also a marketing issue, and there's
Hmm. Hmm.
there's telling our story and the amazing things that happen in Catholic schools, and just finding the forums to do that in the appropriate channels, and then delivering on that product is just so key.
Yeah, Jim, if you haven't yet, you might consider talking to Tom Carroll in the Archdiocese of Boston, who's
Yeah, I know
you
Tom,
know,
sure.
yeah, I've come to really respect his thoughts on this, and along with all those points you just mentioned, which I agree with, and I think are critical. Tom is having great success, promoting a rediscovery of a deep, rich spiritual curriculum in Catholic schools that is just enjoying great success,
Hmm.
recruiting teachers and principals that are on fire for their Catholic faith, in much the same way we're seeing in Catholic dioceses with these folks we
Hmm.
mentioned earlier coming over from the corporate world or Big Four
Yeah.
or Big Four accounting firms. So Tom is driving an agenda where the formation of the young person and discovery of
Mm.
a vibrant, strong faith is just adding a lot to the curriculum and just adding to the success of the school too.
Hmm.
So I personally think that's a big part of it too. Is
Yeah.
where are you at with your provision of faith formation in your school? I mean, are your young people going through the sacraments in preparation in a really meaningful way? You know, like in kind of an extraordinary way where it's something they're excited about and it's seen as a beautiful thing. And are they going to mass? Are they learning about the history and the traditions and the deep treasure of our faith? Yeah, is it being presented in an exciting way? It's a cool thing. It's something they should be excited about and really curious
Yeah.
about. So anyway, Tom, I think has some great ideas around that, which I'm personally attracted to, and I think that's part of it too.
Well, you bring up a great point there. I mean, really capitalizing on our Catholic faith and making it the best possible theological curriculum that we could offer children and families, really, in family faith formation, which is so critical. Is we can't assume that Catholic school families are going to mass every week, or that there is a faith component in the family. So I completely agree. I think that makes perfect sense.
Well, sure, and that should be part of the message too. I mean, for those
Yeah.
Catholic families that aren't attending Mass, aren't fully practicing their faith. I mean, that's an invitation that has to be rolled out. And I mean, of
Yeah.
course, you have to do it in a kind way, in a charitable way, in a patient way. But I think at some point we just kind of gave up on that, and I shouldn't say all people. I mean, in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
some gave up on that. And I think we got to get back to that. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, I mean, we're a Catholic school. We're proud of that. We're excited about that. We'd love to see you in mass on Sunday.
Yeah.
If can I sit with you? Can I walk with you there? Et cetera." So my daughter Rosemary is going to the Regina Academy at St. John's in Ottsville, here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and they do a really cool thing every morning. They gather for a forum at the very beginning of the day, where they pray together. They have a priest present. They say the Pledge of Allegiance. They sing "God Bless America," and then
Mhm.
they have like a quick minute of just teaching on if there's a saint for that day, if it's a season in the church. Like we just started Advent, we had kind of a talk about that. And here's the best part, Jim. They let parents show up for these. So I try to go to everyone I can. And Jim, it's been like the best thing for my own spiritual life. I mean, like
Yeah,
one, just seeing
absolutely.
all these kids like into it and on fire and curious. And I mean, like I'm learning things that I should have been taught and I never was. So I mean, like, yeah, to your point, like I mean, that's another beautiful gift that Catholic schools give. It's not just to the kids; it's also to the families.
I miss those years, John. I've got three in college now, and I do miss being in that Catholic school environment. It's probably why I agreed to come back onto the board that I used to sit on at our Catholic school at St. Anne's. I just so grateful to the community that embraced us when we moved here to the Lehigh Valley. They became an extension of our family, and I don't think you can put a price tag on that. That was just, it was something. We were not from here. We had no family or friends here. And just being in that community, we formed, friendships that we've had for over 15 years now. So
That's
I
beautiful,
just,
Jim. That's so cool.
yeah. So speaking of kind of revitalizing our faith, the Eucharistic revival movement and the Eucharistic Congress is something that we're seeing coming on strong. And just in our last episode here, we had Tim Glemkowski,
Wow.
the new executive director of the Eucharistic Revival, and he's doing amazing things. I got to speak with him back in August. And what are you seeing on the national front on some of the? I know Tim's just getting started, and the conference is still a ways away. But I'm already receiving. I think I have now 2 books on rediscovering the Eucharist that I've received just in the last 2 weeks from different authors. There's definitely, you can feel the bishops kind of really pressing and pushing in on this really important topic, especially in light of getting people to come back to Mass and getting them kind of out of their comfortable sofa chair and back into the pew. What are you seeing on the national front, John?
Yeah, and it's just me talking my personal opinion. I just really commend the USCCB for sparking this movement and making
Yeah,
this a priority. I think it's an awesome demonstration of leadership. And as you probably learned from your conversation with Tim, this is actually bringing something back, that had been a part of the church's life
yes.
decades
Hmm.
ago, that it kind of faded away, and now we're bringing it back, which I think is a very important thing to point out. That we allowed this tradition to atrophy and ultimately go away but now with great intention and with the leadership of the bishops and other organizations, we're bringing it back. So it's just another, like we were talking about earlier, just another point of pride for the Catholic Church right now. Listen, we need to be focused on things like this. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we spend a lot of time thinking, a lot of time talking about things that don't necessarily unite Catholics, and this is something that should unite all of us. This is exactly the core of who we are, the presence and the opportunity to physically commune with Jesus Christ daily through the Eucharist and all the responsibilities that come along with that, all the avoidance of sin, the going to confession, receiving absolution, doing penance, everything goes along with it. The reverence at the Mass, recognizing that something really extraordinary is happening there, teaching that to your children. That's what the Eucharistic revival is all about, and also bringing back the beauty of the church, which is one of our great advantages that for some reason, we've let fade out a little bit. I mean, the church has so much beauty around it, in its architecture and its art and its music, in the way it presents itself at Mass and in public displays. Eucharistic processions, which are a part of the church's life throughout the world, including here in the United States, are seeing a renaissance. We've seen that in many different places, including in New York City a month ago, where the Blessed Sacrament was walked down Fifth Avenue in a very grand setting. Last year when they did that, that was covered in the Wall Street Journal. Received a lot of media attention. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess that it's an opportunity internally for the church to remind ourselves, or perhaps teach for the first time, a core teaching, really the central teaching of the practice of our faith.
Yeah.
One, for our own revival, but two, to share that with the world, and the opportunity that the Catholic Church provides people to commune so intimately with God in a very special way.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it. Tim is a friend. I support him 100%. I pray for him all the time. I'm
Mm.
doing anything I can to help him and his team. And I think, Jim, I think this is going to be a big deal. I think that the public displays and the PR work and the promotions going around the Eucharistic revival is going to reignite the Catholic Church, unite us around a cause that we should all be excited for. And as we see the Congress coming up in 2.5 years, further expand the Catholic Church's reach into modern culture and mainstream society through this big major event that'll occur every year and really
Mhm.
promote all the good things that our church does.
Well said, John. I'm going to tell you a little funny story. So, few weeks ago, my wife was not feeling well, and I could feel something kind of coming on a little bit, and I've been struggling a little bit with a cough. So it's Sunday morning. I said, honey, she was feeling awful. Why don't we just put on Father Mike Schmidt's? I don't want you to get anybody sick. I don't want you to get sicker. And I sat down there, and at the very beginning of Mass, Father Mike says, now, I'm so happy that all of our virtual pew friends could join us, as he always says at the beginning of his Mass. But if you're able to go to Mass, if you are physically able to go, I just want to remind you that it is a sin to miss Mass. I mean, he really put it on the line there. And I'm sitting there in that chair thinking, I looked at my wife and said, all right, God's trying to tell me something. I got to go to Mass. I'm sorry. And we never miss Mass. We've been going back to in person since for over a year now. But it was just funny. It was like God was speaking to me in that moment. It's like, all right, Jim, you could physically go to Mass right now. You need to get off that couch and get back to it. And I think so often it's that simple. It's just a choice that we make and say, well, okay, maybe this Sunday we'll just watch Mass online. But we need that Eucharistic presence in our own life. We need the real presence. I was just listening to something this morning on, the need for community in our life as a community of believers. Mass is not something that we do alone. It's not a spectator sport where we watch it on a TV. It's the real presence of Christ, and we are that presence of Christ when we come to be together at Mass. So I had my little weak moment, but I'm proud to say I bounced off the couch, took a shower, and got to Mass by 10 o'clock.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that. And Jim, I just, when you were talking about this just came to my mind too. Like, I think it's also an opportunity for us to teach and defend the Catholic
Yeah.
Church's uh, ministry around the Eucharist. I mean,
Yeah.
let's really go through why we believe what we do, why we believe it so strongly, the evidence and the teaching around it.
Hmm.
Let's allow that to be questioned. Let's allow that to be
Yeah.
criticized.
Yeah.
And the smartest people in the church, I will have an opportunity to defend it,
Hmm.
to provide the evidence, to provide why we believe this so strongly. And I think that has great value too. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
and we have brilliant people in the church that are ready for that conversation, and I think will ignite more sincere belief in the real presence than anything else. Maybe would be to have that, kind of back and forth about it, and ultimately the truth will prevail. I have no doubt.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like, when's the last time you heard a good debate about that, or a good, or a good, kind of, criticism of it? You know, I mean, that's something I think is healthy too.
I do too. Yeah, we have to be challenged in our faith, and
Yeah.
that's what Jesus did for. I mean, Jesus didn't mince words. He was loving. He loved everybody, but he also challenged them, and he made some people pretty angry. Clearly,
Yeah,
so
it's you're right. I mean, it's not easy to stand up for these things. It's not easy to believe these things. I mean, it's that's why it's a lifelong journey, right?
it really
Um,
is.
God, but it's so valuable. It's I know it's given you a great deal. I know you're close to finishing your diaconate studies. I'm so happy for you and proud of you, Jim. And
Thank you. I
just
appreciate that.
that's the cool thing about the Catholic Church, though, is that, like, you can never know it all. You can never explore it, fully.
Yeah.
You can just kind of get as far as you can in your life, and you're certainly, doing that in your studies right now.
Oh, thank you, John. I appreciate you saying that. Well, as we come to a close, tell me a little bit about anything new happening with the DFMC or the Catholic Finance Association. I'm sure you have a lot of initiatives on tap for 2023.
Yeah, wrapping up a really strong 2022 on the Catholic Finance Association front. This was a real year of growth for us. Our Women of Wall Street event back in June, graciously hosted by our friends from Mutual America on Park Avenue in Manhattan. It was a triumph for us with Kelly Evans from CNBC as our host and guest of honor that night, interviewing three Catholic female executives, women executives, talking about their faith and their leadership. That was a real triumph for us. Really proud of how that turned out. And
Sure.
then we'll do our annual summer patio reception at the cathedral. This year we tried it at Old St. Patrick's, which was great. We might do that again. But we, historically have done that at the patio of the St. Patrick's Cathedral, the new cathedral on Fifth Avenue, which is under renovation this year. It wasn't available to us. And then the Pinstripe Mass, which is kind of our marquee event every year. We're really proud of that. Cardinal Dolan celebrates when he's in town and available. That'll be in November, and we celebrate Mass at St. Patrick's, and we go to a local restaurant for fellowship and
Nice.
coffee hour afterwards. And then we do webinars, and the podcast will continue. We'll keep that going at least another year. I'm having fun with that. And then we want to look for opportunities to connect Catholic finance professionals for mentoring opportunities, both mentoring and being mentored. That's on the horizon. And down the road, we'd like to grow it. We'd like to grow it beyond New York City. We do have members in other places, but no, kind of really strong groups that are meeting regularly, like the New York group is. There's no reason that the Catholic Finance Association shouldn't be a national organization, a chapter organization like so many other Catholic groups. We could certainly do that in the big cities, at least. I think, Boston, D.C., Chicago, L.A., Denver,
Hmm.
Phoenix. So yeah, it's kind of a 5-year plan for that, and that's a volunteer role for me, by the way. I'm the president, but I
Hmm.
just I just do that, yeah, as a leadership opportunity, and and a way to serve the church. And then for DFMC, really excited for what's coming up in 2023. We have our conference in Denver in September, which is going to be great. Really good. Always good to go back to Denver. That's actually where the DFMC was first originated, in kind of like the founding conversations
Oh,
53 years ago. A
okay.
group of Catholic finance people and clergy met in Denver. I think they were at another conference, and came up with the idea of the DFMC. So it's a chance to go back to our roots. For me, it's a
Fun.
chance to go back to my roots too, because in 1993, I was there at World Youth Day when Pope St. John Paul II came to Denver, and that was obvious for everybody. That went to that. That was a big turning point, for me included. So that whenever I go to Denver, I obviously think of that. So that conference curricula and speaker lineup is set. All the planning is complete. We're blessed to have Archbishop Aquila join us for some of that time. And we'll have a beautiful mass at the cathedral in downtown Denver, not far from the state capitol. And then you'll have speakers participating, talking about all areas of fiscal management and providing value to attendees. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors, the DFMC, the exhibitors and the sponsors that make that happen. They've really stepped up to support our conference in a major way in recent years, and I just can't express enough gratitude to them. So both those organizations are in really good shape, as are the ones that I'm just involved in, again, as a volunteer, such as Array of Hope and Catholic Leadership Institute, which I know you're very familiar with, and other great causes, supporting the church and its members. So looking forward to the new year, man. I hope I can get a little bit of downtime around the holiday, though, just to curl up with a coffee and a book and play with my kids a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we both have a lot to be thankful for, both with our families and the way that the Lord continues to call us in service to the church. I feel very fortunate, and John, you're doing just some amazing things, and it's been exciting to see, each step from legatus to the roles that you're playing now. You're just doing amazing work for the church. Thank you for the service that you provide and for providing that forum for our financial leaders and our bishops so that they can talk about these issues and continue to network and provide new resources for them. So it's just so critical. It provides really so much of the backbone of the business aspect to keeping the church vibrant and healthy today. So thank you.
Well, Jim, that means a lot coming from you. Thank you for saying that, and likewise. And just if I could leave, on any note, it's this: there is an abundance of really, really good things going on in the Catholic Church right now. I don't think there's ever been a better time to be Catholic in the United States than right now. There's just so much clarity and contrast around our belief systems with perhaps what's being offered outside. It's just a good. I mean, if you appreciate love, if you appreciate peace, if you appreciate charity in your neighbor, if you appreciate living a good life and being a moral person and being a part of the oldest and the most diverse and the most enduring institution in human civilization. I mean, it's just a great time to come back to the faith or come to it for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. John, thanks for coming back on Advancing Our Church. It's always great to be with you. When you're with a fellow podcaster and when you're with a friend on the show, it's always, the conversation just tends to flow, and I really enjoyed our time together.
Likewise, brother. God bless you.
All right, thanks. All right.
I want to thank John for being on our show this week and for taking some time with us today to talk about the wonderful opportunities that are happening in our church. If you haven't checked out his Faith and Finance Forum podcast, I will leave a link in the show notes of this episode so that you can subscribe, and I'll leave a link to John and the DFMC as well. Thank you again, John, for being on our show and for all you do for the Catholic Church. Well, that's our show this week. Special thanks to Podastery Studios for another great show. And if you'd like to help our show, please leave us a rating wherever you downloaded this podcast. And if this is your first time listening to Advancing Our Church, I hope you'll stick around and subscribe. You can find us on all places where you download your favorite podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And for more information about our show, please visit us at advancingourchurch.com. Advancing Our Church is a production of Changing Our World, and we are a fundraising and social impact consulting firm that has been advising both nonprofits and corporations for more than 2 decades. For more information, please visit us at changingourworld.com. Well, that's it for me, everybody. Hope you have a great week and enjoy this Advent season. Take care, and God bless.